The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when Jack Sullivan pulled his motorcycle into the rest stop off Highway 50 in Nevada. It was the kind of cold November rain that felt like punishment, each drop hitting his face like a tiny accusation. He was soaked through despite his leather jacket, and his hands were numb on the handlebars. He needed coffee, needed warmth, needed to stop riding for just a few minutes before the exhaustion pulled him off the bike entirely. The rest stop was nearly empty. A couple of semi-trucks idled in the parking lot, their drivers sleeping in the cabs. The small building that housed restrooms and vending machines glowed with fluorescent light that seemed harsh after hours of darkness. Jack parked his bike under an overhang and sat there for a moment, listening to the rain drum against the metal roof above him. He was 43 years old and felt ancient. His face was weathered from years of sun and wind, his dark hair streaked with gray, his eyes carrying the kind of hollowness that came from grief so deep it had carved out everything inside and left only echoes. It had been 8 months since the accident, 8 months since a drunk driver had crossed the center line on a rainy night, much like this one, and taken everything that mattered from Jack's world. His wife, Kelly, his daughter, Claire, gone in an instant, just gone. Jack climbed off his bike stiffly, his joints protesting. He'd been riding for 6 days straight, ever since he'd left his house in Portland, and pointed the bike east with no destination in mind. Just riding, just moving. Because staying still meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering meant drowning in a grief so vast he couldn't breathe around it. He walked toward the building, his boots splashing through puddles, when he heard it. A whimper. Quiet and desperate, barely audible over the rain. Jack stopped and listened. There it was again, coming from behind the dumpster near the edge of the parking lot. Jack walked over slowly, not sure what to expect. Behind the dumpster, huddled against the concrete wall, was a dog. Medium-sized, maybe 40 pounds, with matted fur that might have been golden or brown under all the mud and rain. The dog looked up at Jack with dark eyes that held the same kind of exhaustion and defeat Jack saw in his own mirror every morning. "Hey there," Jack said softly, crouching down a few feet away. He didn't reach out, didn't make any sudden moves. "You okay, buddy?" The dog didn't growl or bark, just watched him with those sad eyes, shivering in the cold. Jack could see the dog's ribs through its dirty fur, could see the way it favored its left front paw. Hurt and hungry and alone. Just like him. Jack stood up and went into the building. He bought coffee from the vending machine and a couple of sandwiches from the cooler. Then he went back outside to where the dog was still huddled behind the dumpster. He unwrapped one of the sandwiches and tore off a piece of meat, tossing it gently toward the dog. The dog sniffed the air, then lunged forward and grabbed the meat, eating it in 2 gulps. Jack tossed another piece, then another, letting the dog come closer with each offering. By the time the sandwich was gone, the dog was only a few feet away, looking at him with something like hope in its eyes. "You're in pretty rough shape," Jack said. He opened the second sandwich and fed it to the dog piece by piece. "No collar, no tags." "You been out here long?" The dog didn't answer, just kept eating. When the food was gone, it sat down and looked at Jack expectantly, like it knew there was more to this encounter than just a meal. Jack sighed. He wasn't in any shape to take care of a dog. He could barely take care of himself. He'd been living like a ghost for 8 months, going through the motions of existence without actually living. The house in Portland was cold and empty, full of memories that cut like broken glass. He'd finally left because staying there was killing him slowly, and writing, at least, gave him the illusion of purpose. But looking at this dog, this broken creature that had survived, God knew what to end up alone behind a dumpster in the middle of nowhere, Jack felt something stir inside him. Not hope, exactly. Maybe just recognition. One lost soul seeing another. "All right," Jack said. "Come on." He walked back to his bike, and the dog followed, limping slightly. Jack pulled a bungee cord from his saddlebag and fashioned a makeshift leash. The dog let him attach it without protest, too tired or too desperate to care. Jack looked at his bike, then at the dog, trying to figure out logistics. His bike wasn't set up for carrying passengers, canine or otherwise. In the end, he unzipped his leather jacket and tucked the small dog inside against his chest, zipping it back up so only the dog's head poked out near his collar. It was awkward and uncomfortable, but it would work for now. The dog settled against him, and Jack could feel its heart beating fast against his own. He rode for another hour before he found a motel, a rundown place called the Desert Star, with a neon sign that flickered between pink and blue. The clerk didn't bat an eye at the muddy man with a muddy dog, just took Jack's cash and handed over a key to room 7. The room was exactly what Jack expected: worn carpet, faded bedspread, bathroom with cracked tile. But it was warm and dry, and that was enough. Jack set the dog down gently and went to run a bath. The dog followed him, watching as Jack adjusted the water temperature to lukewarm. "Okay, buddy, let's get you cleaned up." He lifted the dog into the tub, and it didn't resist. Just stood there shivering while Jack worked shampoo through its matted fur, being careful around the injured paw. The water turned brown with dirt and grime, and slowly the dog's true color emerged, a golden brown coat, lighter around the chest and muzzle. As Jack washed away the layers of street life, he realized this was actually a beautiful dog, probably had been someone's pet once before something had gone wrong. After the bath, Jack dried the dog with motel towels and examined its paw. There was a cut, not deep but infected. He cleaned it as best he could with soap and water, knowing he'd need to get proper supplies in the morning. The dog endured the treatment with patience, seeming to understand that Jack was trying to help. Jack ordered pizza and shared it with the dog, who ate slowly this time, like it was finally starting to believe food might keep coming. They sat together on the bed, and Jack found himself talking, not about anything important, just narrating his thoughts, filling the silence that had been his only companion for months. "I had a family once," he heard himself say, "wife and daughter. Kelly and Claire, they were everything." His voice caught, but he kept going. "There was an accident, 8 months ago, drunk driver. They died instantly. That's what the police said, like that was supposed to make it better, knowing they didn't suffer." The dog looked at him with those dark eyes, and Jack continued, "I've been angry. So angry I can't see straight sometimes. Angry at the driver, at God, at myself for not being in that car with them. Survivor's guilt, the therapist called it. Said I needed to process my grief, find meaning, all that textbook stuff. But how do you find meaning in something so senseless?" The dog shifted closer and laid its head on Jack's leg. The weight of it, the warmth, was the first physical comfort Jack had felt in months. He put his hand on the dog's head, feeling the soft fur, and something inside him cracked just slightly. "I don't even know what I'm doing anymore," Jack said quietly. "Just riding. Running away from a life that doesn't exist anymore. Smart, right?" The dog made a soft sound, not quite a whine, more like acknowledgement. Jack smiled despite himself. "You're a good listener. Better than the therapist anyway. You got a name?" The dog didn't respond, obviously, but Jack felt like he needed to call it something. He thought about it for a moment. The dog had been lost and alone, just like him. Had survived against odds, just like he was trying to. Had found Jack in the darkness, or maybe Jack had found the dog. Either way, they'd found each other. "Scout," Jack said finally. "I'm going to call you Scout. That okay with you?" Scout's tail thumped once against the bedspread. Good enough. They slept that night with Scout curled up at the foot of the bed. It was the first time in months that Jack didn't wake up every hour, drowning in nightmares. Something about Scout's presence, the sound of the dog's breathing, anchored him in the present instead of letting him drift into the dark waters of memory. The next morning, Jack bought supplies at a local store. Dog food, a proper collar and leash, antibiotics for Scout's paw, and a first aid kit. He also bought a dog bed, though Scout seemed perfectly content sleeping on the motel bed with him. The clerk at the pet store was a middle-aged woman who took one look at Scout and said, "That's a good-looking dog. You've had him long?" "Found him last night at a rest stop." "Lucky dog. Lucky you too, probably. Dogs have a way of finding the people who need them most." She smiled as she rang up his purchases. "You planning to keep him?" Jack hadn't thought about it in those terms. Keep him, like this was a permanent thing. "I don't know. I'm just traveling, not set up for a dog." "Looks to me like you're set up just fine. He sure seems to have adopted you." Jack looked down at Scout, who was sitting patiently by his feet, looking up at him with complete trust. Maybe the clerk was right. Maybe Scout had adopted him. They spent another day at the Desert Star while Jack waited for Scout's paw to heal enough for walking. During that time, Jack found himself falling into a routine. Morning walk around the motel parking lot. Breakfast shared between them. Afternoon nap with Scout curled against his side. Evening meal, more talking, more memories shared with a dog who just listened without judgment or advice. Jack told Scout about Kelly, about how they'd met at a Metallica concert when they were both 22 and had bonded over shared music tastes and a mutual hatred of mainstream country. He told Scout about Claire, about her 8th birthday party 3 months before the accident, about how she'd wanted to learn to ride a motorcycle like her dad when she got older. He told Scout things he hadn't told anyone, things he hadn't even admitted to himself, and Scout listened, never interrupted, never offered platitudes, never tried to fix anything, just listened and was present, and somehow that was enough. On the third day, Jack woke up to find Scout sitting by the motel room door, looking at him intently. "You need to go out?" Jack asked, reaching for the leash. But Scout didn't move toward him, just kept staring at the door, then back at Jack, then at the door again. "What is it, boy?" Scout barked once, sharp and insistent, then walked to the door and scratched at it. This wasn't the usual "I need to pee" behavior. This was something else, something purposeful. Jack got dressed and clipped the leash to Scout's collar. As soon as he opened the door, Scout pulled forward, straining against the leash. Not running wildly, but moving with clear intention, like he knew where he was going. Okay, led the way. Scout pulled Jack across the parking lot, past the motel office, toward the road. Jack followed, curious now. Scout had barely been able to walk 3 days ago, and now he was moving like a dog on a mission. They walked along the shoulder of the highway for about a quarter mile before Scout turned down a side road. This road was unpaved, leading into the desert scrubland, and Jack hesitated. "Scout, I don't think—" Scout barked again, more insistent. Jack sighed and followed. They walked for another 10 minutes, the desert quiet except for the wind and the crunch of their footsteps. Then Scout stopped in front of an old mobile home, half hidden behind a stand of juniper trees. The place looked abandoned, windows dark, weeds growing high around it, no vehicle in sight. Scout sat down and looked at Jack expectantly. "This is what you wanted to show me? An abandoned trailer?" Scout barked and moved toward the trailer's door. Jack followed reluctantly, feeling like he was trespassing. But as he got closer, he heard something. A sound so faint he almost missed it. Crying. A child crying. Jack's heart rate spiked. He moved quickly to the door and knocked. "Hello? Anyone in there?" The crying stopped. Then a small voice, barely audible. "Help!" Jack tried the door. Locked. He looked at Scout, who was still sitting patiently like he'd known this was here all along. "Good boy, Scout. Good boy." Jack moved to a window and peered through the dirty glass. Inside, he could make out a small figure huddled in the corner of what looked like a living room. "Hey!" Jack called through the window. "Can you hear me? Are you okay?" The figure moved closer to the window. It was a boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with dark hair and a tear-stained face. "I'm locked in," the boy said. "My mom left and locked the door. She said she'd be back soon, but that was, I don't know how long. A long time. I'm really hungry." Jack's mind raced. A child locked in a trailer, mother gone for who knew how long. This was bad, really bad. "Okay, buddy. Don't worry, I'm going to get you out. What's your name?" "Noah." "Noah, I'm Jack. I'm going to break this window to get to you, okay? Cover your eyes and stay back." Jack found a rock and smashed the window, clearing away the glass as carefully as he could. Then he climbed through, Scout barking encouragement from outside. Inside, the trailer smelled of stale air and garbage. Empty food containers littered the floor, and Jack could see that Noah had been surviving on whatever scraps were in the house. He knelt down next to Noah. The boy was thin, pale, with dark circles under his eyes. "When did your mom leave?" "I don't know. Days? The sun went up and down 3 times, I think." 3 days. This child had been locked in here alone for 3 days. Jack felt rage building in his chest, but he pushed it down. Right now, the priority was getting Noah help. "Okay, Noah, I'm going to take you out of here. We're going to get you some food and water, and then we're going to call some people who can help. That okay with you?" Noah nodded and reached up his arms. Jack picked him up carefully. He was so light, too light, and carried him to the window. He passed Noah through to Scout, who'd been watching anxiously, then climbed out himself. Scout immediately pressed against Noah, licking his face, and the boy laughed for the first time. "You have a dog." "His name is Scout. He's the one who brought me here. I think he knew you needed help." They walked back to the motel, Noah riding on Jack's shoulders, Scout trotting alongside. At the motel, Jack called 911 and explained the situation. Then he fed Noah and gave him water, watching carefully to make sure he didn't make himself sick by eating too fast. Scout stayed close to Noah the whole time, like he was standing guard. The police and child services arrived within an hour. Jack gave his statement, explained how Scout had led him to the trailer, provided all the information he could. A social worker named Patricia took Noah aside and talked to him gently, assessing his condition. "You saved this boy's life," Patricia said to Jack afterward. "Another day or two, and, well, his mother has a history of drug use and neglect. We've been looking for Noah for a week, but his mother kept moving him around. We had no idea they were out here." "It wasn't me," Jack said. "It was the dog." Scout found him. Patricia looked at Scout, who was sitting next to Noah, the boy's hand resting on his head. "Animals have instincts we don't understand. I've seen it before. Dogs who know when someone's having a seizure, cats who detect cancer. Your dog knew that boy needed help." "He's not really my dog. I just found him a few days ago. Looks like he found you, and then he found Noah. That's not coincidence, Mr. Sullivan. That's purpose." After everyone left, Noah, going to emergency foster care, promises that Jack would be updated on his situation. Jack sat alone in the motel room with Scout. He was shaking, adrenaline finally wearing off, the reality of what had happened sinking in. They'd saved a child's life. Scout had somehow known, had somehow led Jack to that trailer at exactly the right time. Jack looked at Scout, who was watching him with those dark, knowing eyes. "How did you know? How did you know Noah was there?" Scout tilted his head, and Jack could almost imagine the dog was saying, "I just knew you needed to find him. You needed to save someone. You needed to remember that you could still make a difference." That night, Jack dreamed of Kelly and Claire for the first time in months without waking up screaming. In the dream, they were at a park, and Claire was playing with a golden brown dog that looked exactly like Scout. Kelly smiled at Jack and said, "He's perfect. He's exactly what you needed." Jack woke up with tears on his face, but they weren't the bitter tears of grief he'd cried for 8 months. They were something else, something softer. He looked at Scout, who was sleeping peacefully at the foot of the bed, and he understood. Kelly would have loved this dog, Claire would have begged to keep him, and they would have both been proud of what he and Scout had done today. Jack and Scout stayed in the area for another week. Jack wanted to make sure Noah was okay, wanted to see this through. He visited the boy in foster care, bringing Scout with him. Noah's face lit up every time he saw the dog, and the foster parents said Scout's visits were the only time Noah really smiled. During that week, Jack learned more about Noah's situation. His mother, Amy, was a 32-year-old woman with a long history of drug addiction. Noah's father was out of the picture, and there were no other family members able or willing to take him. Amy was arrested when she finally returned to the trailer and found it swarming with police. She was charged with child endangerment and neglect. Patricia, the social worker, kept Jack updated. "We're looking for permanent placement for Noah. He's a sweet kid, but he's been through trauma. He'll need a stable home with people who understand what he's been through." Jack thought about that. A stable home. He didn't have a stable home anymore. He had an empty house in Portland full of ghosts and a motorcycle that had been his only home for the past week. He wasn't qualified to take care of a traumatized child. But then he thought about Noah's face when Scout came to visit. Thought about the way the boy had laughed for the first time when Scout licked his cheek. Thought about purpose and meaning in the way Scout had led him to that trailer at exactly the moment Noah needed saving. "What happens if you can't find permanent placement?" Jack asked Patricia. "He'll stay in the foster system." "We have good homes, but they're always overcrowded. Noah would be moved around a lot, probably. Different schools, different families. It's not ideal." Jack sat with that information for 2 days. He called his brother in Portland, the only family he had left. "I'm thinking about doing something crazy," Jack said. "Crazier than riding across the country with no destination?" "Yeah, there's a kid here. 7 years old. Lost his mom to drugs and neglect. No family to take him. I'm thinking about, I don't know, seeing if I could foster him. Maybe more than foster him. His brother was quiet for a long moment. Jack, you're still grieving. You've been on the road for a week trying to outrun your pain. Are you sure you're thinking clearly? I've never been more clear about anything in my life. Kelly and I always talked about fostering when Claire got older, said we had room in our hearts and our home for kids who needed families. We never got the chance. Maybe this is the chance. What about the dog? Jack looked at Scout, who was lying on the bed watching him. The dog is non-negotiable. We're a package deal now. His brother sighed. If you're serious about this, you need to come home. Get your house in order, literally and figuratively. Go through the proper channels. You can't just adopt a kid because you feel guilty about your family. It's not guilt. It's purpose. For 8 months, I've been a shell, just going through the motions. But these past few days with Scout and Noah, I felt like maybe there's a reason I survived when Kelly and Claire didn't. Maybe I survived to save Noah, to give him the family he needs and to give myself a reason to keep living. Then do it right. Come home, make your case to the social workers, show them you can provide a stable home. And Jack, if you're going to do this, you have to be all in. That kid's been abandoned once. He can't go through it again. I know, I will be. All in. Jack met with Patricia the next day and told her his intention. She was skeptical at first. A single man, recently bereaved, wanting to foster a traumatized child seemed like a recipe for disaster. But Jack was persistent. He showed her the house he owned in Portland, his financial stability, his clean record. He talked about his own therapy, about working through his grief, about wanting to honor his family's memory by doing something good. I'm not trying to replace my daughter, Jack said. I know Noah isn't Claire and never will be. But Kelly and I always wanted to help kids who needed families. This feels like finishing something we started together. Patricia studied him carefully. Fostering requires training, background checks, home studies. It's a long process. I'm not going anywhere. I'll do whatever it takes. And the dog? Scout stays with me. He's part of this. You understand that Noah's mother might get custody back if she completes treatment? I understand, but right now, Noah needs a safe place. I can be that place. Patricia nodded slowly. Okay, let's start the process. But Mr. Sullivan, I'm going to be watching closely. If I see any signs that this isn't working, that Noah's being hurt by this arrangement, I'll remove him immediately. Understood. The process took 3 months. 3 months of background checks and home studies and training sessions on trauma-informed parenting. 3 months of Jack fixing up his house, turning the guest room into a bedroom fit for a 7-year-old boy, painting walls and buying furniture, and slowly transforming the mausoleum of his grief into something that felt like a home again. During those months, Jack visited Noah regularly, always bringing Scout. They'd go to parks, get ice cream, just spend time together. Jack didn't push, didn't try to force a relationship. He just showed up, consistently, proving that he was reliable, that he wouldn't leave. And slowly, Noah began to trust, began to talk about his life, his fears, his hopes, began to call Jack by his name instead of just that guy, began to ask if Scout could live with them when Noah came home. Scout and I are a package deal, Jack told him. When you come live with me, if you want to, Scout will be there too. I want to, Noah said quietly. I want to live with you and Scout. In February, 10 months after Jack had lost his family, and 3 months after he'd found Scout, Noah officially moved into Jack's house as a foster placement. The social workers brought him with 2 bags of belongings and a social history thick enough to break your heart. Jack and Scout met them at the door, and Noah ran to them both, hugging Scout first and then Jack. Welcome home, Jack said. It wasn't easy. Noah had nightmares and trust issues and behavioral problems that came from years of instability. There were times when Jack doubted himself, times when he felt overwhelmed and unprepared. But Scout was always there, a calming presence for both of them. When Noah had a nightmare, Scout would climb into his bed and stay there until morning. When Jack felt himself spiraling into grief, Scout would press against his leg and remind him to breathe. Jack went back to work at the construction company he'd worked for before the accident. His co-workers welcomed him back carefully, not sure what to say to a man who'd lost everything, and was now trying to rebuild with a foster kid and a rescue dog. But Jack threw himself into work and parenting with equal intensity, determined to do right by Noah. They established routines: morning walks with Scout before school, homework at the kitchen table after work, dinner together every night, even if it was just pizza or takeout, bedtime stories, with Scout curled up at the foot of Noah's bed, weekends spent at the park or the movies or just hanging out at home, the three of them figuring out how to be a family. 6 months into the placement, Patricia came for a home visit. She watched Jack and Noah interact, watched the way Scout moved between them, like glue holding them together, and she smiled. "You've done well," she told Jack privately. "Noah's thriving. His therapist says he's making real progress. His teacher says he's engaged and doing better in school. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." "I'm just showing up," Jack said, "being consistent, letting him know he matters. That's what good parenting is." Most people never figure that out. Patricia paused. Noah's mother completed her treatment program. She's requesting supervised visitation. Jack's stomach dropped. He'd known this might happen, but he'd let himself hope that Amy would stay out of the picture. "And? You're his foster parent. You'll be present for the visits. We'll see how it goes. But Jack, between you and me, Amy's chances of getting full custody back are slim. She's already missed 2 check-ins with her parole officer. I don't think she's ready to be a parent." The visits with Amy were painful. Noah was confused and anxious, wanting to see his mother, but not wanting to leave Jack and Scout. Amy tried, Jack could see that, but she was frail and shaky, and clearly still struggling. After the 3rd visit, she broke down and admitted she couldn't take care of Noah. She wanted what was best for him, and she knew that wasn't her. 2 months later, Amy signed papers terminating her parental rights. She wanted Noah to have a chance at a stable life, and she knew she couldn't provide that. It was the most loving thing she'd ever done for her son. Patricia came to the house with the news. "If you want to move forward with adoption, now's the time. Noah has no other family. You've been his primary caregiver for almost a year. He's bonded with you and with Scout. If you want to make this permanent, we can start the process." Jack looked at Noah, who was in the backyard throwing a ball for Scout. The boy was laughing, his face lit up with pure joy. He'd gained weight, his cheeks filling out, his eyes losing the dark circles of stress and hunger. He looked like a kid should look. Happy, safe, loved. "Yes," Jack said, "let's make it permanent." The adoption was finalized on a sunny day in October, exactly 1 year after Jack had found Scout at that rest stop in Nevada. They had a party at the house with Jack's brother and his family, some friends from work, Patricia and other social workers who'd been involved in Noah's case. There was cake and laughter and celebration of the family they'd become. That evening, after everyone had gone home, Jack sat on the back porch with Noah and Scout. The boy was tucked under his arm, tired from the excitement, and Scout was sprawled at their feet. "Dad?" Noah said. He'd started calling Jack Dad a few months earlier, tentatively at first, then with growing confidence. "What did you wish for when you blew out the candles?" "I didn't blow out the candles." "You did." "I know, but what would you have wished for if you did?" Jack thought about that. A year ago, he would have wished to have his family back, would have wished to undo the accident, to rewind time, to make everything the way it was before. But now? "I would have wished for this," Jack said honestly. "For you and me and Scout. For us to be happy together. For you to grow up knowing you're loved and safe. That's all I need." Noah was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I wished that too. And I wished that Mom Kelly and Claire know that we're okay, that they don't worry about us." Jack felt tears prick his eyes. Noah had learned about Kelly and Claire slowly, through photos and stories Jack had shared. The boy understood that Jack had lost his family. Just like Noah had lost his mother in a different way, they were both survivors of different tragedies, brought together by a stray dog who'd known exactly what they both needed. "I think they do know," Jack said. "I think they sent Scout to me. To us. I think they wanted us to find each other." "Really?" "Really. Scout found me when I was lost. Then he found you when you needed saving. That's not random. That's purpose." Noah considered this. "So Scout's like an angel?" "A dog angel." Jack smiled. "Something like that, a guardian angel with 4 legs and a tail." Scout lifted his head and looked at them, and if a dog could smile, Jack swore Scout was smiling. The dog that had been starving and injured behind a dumpster was now healthy and happy, living in a warm house with a boy who loved him and a man who owed him everything. In the months and years that followed, Jack's life transformed completely. He coached Noah's soccer team, attended school events, did all the normal dad things he thought he'd never do again. He dated eventually, carefully, and introduced Noah to a woman named Helen, who worked as a veterinarian and fell in love with Scout first, and the rest of them second. They married when Noah was 10, and Helen brought her own history of loss. She'd lost a child to illness years before, and her own capacity for love. Noah thrived. He grew into a thoughtful, kind teenager who volunteered at animal shelters and talked about becoming a veterinarian like Helen. He never forgot where he came from, but he wasn't defined by it. He was defined by the family who'd chosen him, by the dog who'd saved him, by the second chance he'd been given. Jack never forgot Kelly and Claire. Their photos stayed on the wall, their memories woven into the fabric of his new life. But the grief that had once been a drowning ocean became something more like a river, still deep, still powerful, but navigable. He learned to carry his loss alongside his love for his new family, understanding that both could exist together. And Scout? Scout lived to be 16 years old, a remarkable age for a dog who'd started life so rough. He was there for every milestone: Noah's middle school graduation, his driver's license, his acceptance to veterinary school. He was there for Jack and Helen's wedding, walking down the aisle wearing a bow tie. He was there for quiet evenings and loud celebrations, always present, always watchful, always connecting the family with his calm, steady presence. When Scout finally passed, peacefully in his sleep with his head on Noah's lap, the family grieved together. They buried him in the backyard under a tree with a headstone that read, "Scout, Guardian Angel. You found us when we were lost and led us home." At the burial, Noah, now 18 and preparing to leave for college, said, "I wouldn't be here without him. We wouldn't be a family without him. He saved my life and Dad's life and brought us together. How do you thank a dog for that?" "You live well," Jack said. "You take the gift he gave us and you pay it forward. You save other lives. You help other people who are lost. That's how you thank him." Noah nodded. "I'm going to specialize in rescue animals when I become a vet. Animals like Scout who've been abandoned or abused. I want to help them the way Scout helped us." "He'd like that," Jack said. "Kelly and Claire would like that too." They stood together in the backyard, Jack, Helen, and Noah, a family forged by loss and found by grace. And though Scout was gone, his legacy remained, in the life he'd saved, in the family he'd created, in the proof that sometimes the broken can heal each other, that sometimes being lost is the first step to being found. Years later, when people asked Jack Sullivan about the tattoo on his arm, a golden brown dog with gentle eyes, he'd tell them the story. About the night he found a stray dog behind a dumpster in Nevada, about how that dog had led him to a locked trailer where a 7-year-old boy was slowly dying, about how that one moment of connection had saved 3 lives, the boy's, the dog's, and his own. He'd tell them about loss and grief and the impossibility of moving forward when everything that mattered was gone. And then he'd tell them about purpose, about how sometimes the universe gives you exactly what you need in the form of something you weren't looking for, about how a stray dog can change your life if you're willing to follow where it leads. "I was dead inside," Jack would say, "just going through the motions of being alive. And then Scout found me, or I found him. Either way, he gave me a reason to keep going. He showed me that I could still make a difference, that my life still had meaning, that there were people who needed me even if the people I needed were gone." And he'd look at the tattoo, at Scout's face rendered in ink and memory, and he'd smile, because Scout had been more than a pet. He'd been a savior, a guide, a bridge between the life Jack had lost and the life he'd built from the ruins. The biker who lost his family had found a stray dog, and that dog had led him to a boy who needed a father, to a purpose that made life worth living, to a future that honored the past without being destroyed by it. That dog had led him home, and that made all the difference.